Right, hello everybody and welcome back to Customer Marketing Catch Up. Today we've got a very special episode. We are currently in the main hall in our Customer Marketing Summit in London and I am here with Toby. Hello Toby, how are you
Hi,
doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. So just to start off with, why don't you introduce yourself kind of to our listeners, who you are, what your role is and kind of what your relationship is currently with customer marketing?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Toby Demurin. I have the pleasure of leading, I'm the global head of advocacy marketing at LinkedIn. And I've been in customer marketing for coming about 15 years now.
Yeah. Wow. So lots of experience there.
A few years.
Yeah.
Few years.
And we mentioned when we were talking that you've just come from an event yesterday and you've just taken a talk at the Customer Marketing Summit today. So very, very busy. But how did you find the talk? How did you feel it went?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think the questions, questions are usually a good temperature gauge of how things have gone, what has landed and resonated with people. I think the questions were great. They're really instructive in terms of how do I take this into my next meeting, into what I'm doing, which is always a good sign. So it was great.
Yeah, it's really nice to have when people are curious kind of about that thing. It means that they're definitely engaged about kind of
there was something that triggered a thought or sparked something. So
it's very satisfying. It must be as a speaker to kind of have that happen.
It's good. It's a mixture of satisfaction and relief.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Okay, I've got it. So I guess kind of leading on from that, your talk was about, had the title winning the hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And the value of winning hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And particularly of kind of customers and the value of customer-centric kind of strategies and development and setup.
Sure.
So I guess kind of to get a little bit of a kind of ground base on the specifics of what you were talking about, why don't you talk a little bit about the two kind of most effective strategies or tips or skills that a customer marketer could take away from what you were talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest things around winning hearts and minds is taking it back to any customer marketing strategy starts with a person at the forefront, and so relating to the customer in a similar way that you would relate to a friend or someone that you know, starting with your values and your personality. And it can seem a bit nebulous when you talk about something like that, but the best, so I gave some examples of some of the best companies that do it. So Apple, Salesforce, Nintendo, they're really values-led companies, and those values aren't insulated within the company culture. Those values are sung from the rooftops. They're very much at the heart of how they want to be known. And what that does is distinguishes their company and their brand in the minds and in the hearts of customers and users and anyone else in the public sphere. So I think that's always a really good place to start, is really to articulate, what do I want people to know about us? What do we care about? What do we value? And the key to bridging that is how are we going to express this in our brand personality? Do we have a brand personality that's very playful? Do we have a brand personality that values simplicity as the highest form of sophistication, like someone like an Apple or even a Nintendo? Do we have a brand personality that is very arty? If you look at a Doc Martin brand or a number of different, so it's taking those values, extrapolating them through to how do we talk about ourselves in the marketplace. And then another thing, so there's a couple more things, like building community. So I think the value of building those and webbing those hearts together, building community, can't go understated. We are gregarious by nature. We like to be around people who are similar to us. We want that idea of belonging. And so how can we foster that? And again, the best companies in the world do it exceptionally well. If you look at Salesforce and Ohana, which is the Hawaiian word for chosen family. If you look at Apple and the way that they're evangelists and the really instructive way that they've set up stuff like their stores, their Genius bars, the customer interaction. It's all very strategic to make you feel a particular way, to make you feel connected with one another. So those are, just a bit of a snippet of some of the best practices that you can do.
I think, because I think thinking about things like Apple and Nintendo, you talked a bit about having a kind of like, I don't know, a sentiment that kind of is specific to your brand.
Yeah.
I kind of have the image of Apple being, it's very kind of sleek, the colours are very distinctly Apple, you have that kind of exclusive feel, which lots of people want within like their Apple products and stuff like that. And then for Nintendo, you talked about like a kind of a playful aspect. It always brings to mind the fact that Nintendo is, a lot of their games are one of the most, probably the best on the market in terms of like multiplayer games, for example, and things like that. And so, almost having a connection between what your products are, so the multiplayer thing, and then having your company kind of almost reflecting that as well.
I think that's a really good point. And going back to that Nintendo point, it's one of the things that I mentioned in the talk is not only is it part of their brand, but it's part of their business strategy, right? Is to say, while other people were investing in online, Microsoft investing online, Sony has built out the PlayStation network, Nintendo said actually bringing people together in person is a core part of our values, and because of that it's a core part of our business strategy. It's a core part of the way we're going to show up from a marketing perspective. And not only does that, if we look at marketing not just as promotion but also product, so that feeds into the type of products that you see from Nintendo. So the Nintendo Wii, it comes from Nintendo because it's part of that fertile ground of how do we bring innovative gameplay experiences to people in a way that connects them face to face and makes it accessible, makes it simple. So there is a bridge between the values that you uphold, and I think when you talk about values, every company has their values, right? But the question is, are these values clear? Are these values consistent? Do they live and breathe through not just your culture, but your communications? Do they impact the way that you build products? Do they impact the way that you do your brand strategy, your customer advocacy strategy? Because these are the things that make you distinctive in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point as well, in terms of making sure that who your company is so clear that you're actually kind of attracting the right customers
100%.
as well.
100%.
If you're a person who wants to do like very competitive online first-person shooter games, you don't go to Nintendo for that, you go to other places. And that's exactly what Nintendo want. They want the people that are connected to those products and connected to those values.
I think it's a temperature gauge of a really good strategy. The right you're not going to be all things to all men. That's always going to be a poor strategy. You have to make those decisions of this is who we are, and the clearer that you are about that, the clearer that you are about the people who don't associate with your brand, right? And the people who, like you say, they might not think actually Nintendo's not for me, Apple's not for me. That's okay, but it's about winning the hearts and minds of the people that you say actually the things that you say, the way that you think about things, the way that you approach the market resonates with me, and that's why I'm going to build loyalty with your company, because I feel like there's a kinship there, and that's super powerful when you get it right.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, I think kind of maybe delving into that a little bit, you talked about like how important it is to get the right kinds of customers on board with you. And the kind of value of connecting those customers through things like community and through your choice of messaging. But inside of that, when you've got this kind of wonderful custom base of people that you need to keep on board and that you love to interact with, obviously people are people. You're going to have varying viewpoints, varying ideas, varying kind of desires of what they then would like out of you as well. So how would you kind of navigate those kinds of differences in order to kind of keep those relationships nurtured
within the community?
Yeah.
I think that's a great point. What I would say is differences of opinion, clashing thoughts, are not necessarily the breakdown of community. It can be the sharpening of community if you do it right. If you do it right, you know, and it comes back to that diversity point. Like you want diversity within your community. You want people who have got different viewpoints and different backgrounds and different ways of thinking about things. But in amongst that, there's a universal language. There's a universal reason why they're all meeting together. So, I think, you know, having the diversity is actually key to community building. You don't want to have a situation where everybody agrees, because usually what happens when you've got a situation where everybody agrees, it means that people aren't being their genuine selves, right? And we've all been in cultures where there is an acquiescence, there's a hierarchical kind of structure, and people say yes, and they say yes to the boss, and they say yes, and they say yes because they feel obliged to say yes. And the best cultures are the cultures where there is friction. There are pulls in different directions. That doesn't mean that they're disunited and they're still not part of that community. But you can have some of that healthy, constructive debate. It shows that you've got distinction in your community, you've got breadth, you've got depth, you've got richness. People are able to be themselves. People are able to show up. Their voice matters, irrespective of whether that voice is in alignment with someone else or completely different.
I mean, very true as well, particularly, you know, for LinkedIn as well, with the kind of value of the conversations that can happen when you have like one big post. You kind of, for me, when I go on LinkedIn, really, it's, you know, I read the top comment, immediately go straight down to the comments and see kind of what there is in there. And then as well with like communities, you know, for Customer Marketing Alliance, we have our own little Slack channel, and one of the most valuable things that we get is somebody going, I've got this problem and I don't quite know how to fix it or what's going on. And those are like sometimes the most valuable kind of things. So I guess you'd say like kind of allowing those conversations to play out really is probably the best way to nurture those.
I think so, and it's being really deliberate about different voices. Some voices are louder than others. Some people are, you know, a bit more reserved about how they talk and share. So I think creating a culture of belonging is super important, right? A culture where people feel safe, a culture where there's not just one personality that's celebrated, but you celebrate a load of different personalities, from extrovert to introvert, to people who are outspoken, to people who are softly spoken. And that's when you get a really rich culture.
That's such a good point. And I guess kind of to round up the things that we've talked about, you know, the value of connecting the types of customers with brand values, with kind of maintaining relationships within communities through dialogue and stuff. One of the big things within customer marketing that we talk about is the kind of development of, you know, customer retention, customer loyalty, and then through to customer advocacy. So what advice do you have in terms of kind of like maintaining and then developing the relationships with customers to then, you know, kind of remain loyal and see the whole of the customer journey and the customer life cycle through?
I think what I would say is there's no silver bullet to this. There's no kind of like, you do this thing and then all your customers become advocates, right? I think it's super important to think of every marketing interaction, every customer interaction as an opportunity to build relationships, continue relationships, build advocacy, you know. And I think once you do that, there's a great book by Will Gadara talking about unreasonable hospitality, and it's taking from the hospitality industry some of the thinking around, from the way you greet someone to the way you talk about things to the way, the whole experience, it all matters, right? And I think from a marketing perspective, we can take that into the way that we do things. So the way that we show up via email campaigns, the way we show up at events, the post, the way we knit together our digital experiences with our in-person experiences, with, there's a thread between all of these, right? That makes people feel like this is a company that I like.
Yeah.
This is a company that I feel like I want to keep coming back to, because that's essentially the feeling that you want.
Yeah.
And then in amongst that, the advocacy it happens naturally, right? Because of the nature of human beings, we are gregarious.
Yeah.
When we like stuff, we tell people.
Yeah.
And so, getting those things right is so vital to getting that end result.
Yeah. I really liked kind of what you said about making sure everything connects as well. Like here today, we're Customer Marketing Alliance is primarily a virtual kind of community, and being able to connect that with starting conversations within Slack, knowing people's faces on profile pictures and names and stuff, and then to be able to then continue that conversation at events like this, as we're doing now. We connected via email first and reaching out and things like that, and it's really nice to kind of have that idea in mind, not obviously not to be confused necessarily with what more can I get out of this person, but
that's
how
important.
can we then provide value? What other parts of our company would then suit this person, rather than what else can we get out of this?
Exactly what you said is super important. Like the value piece is absolutely instrumental into that. Rather than looking at everything as a potential transaction, is thinking about what are the ways that we can provide value to this person, irrespective of whether they buy or not, whether they, any of those things, because the sale will come later down the line, but in amongst that, the value that you provide, and being, one of the things that I spoke about in the talk is being really bold and confident. The best companies are not shy about who they are and what they do. And I think, particularly in a crowded marketplace, in times where, you're fighting for market share, you're fighting for share of mind, share of voice, you really have to think differently about how you do things. You have to be able to say, this is how we're going to do it, and it's different to the competition, but it's still true to who we are. That's how you become memorable, and so I think that memorable aspect is huge. I think of a brand called Oatly.
Okay. Oh yes.
They make
I know.
oat milk, and people know about that brand because some of the way they've been doing their marketing. I love their out of home campaigns, even on the box. Like it's funny. You can tell the copywriter had a lot of fun with it. When you're a challenger brand like Oatly is, and like Salesforce was back in the day, you really have to cut through. And the way you cut through is through being bold, being confident, making bold decisions, and taking risks. So that's super important too.
Amazing. It's such an amazing statement to kind of like end this thing on. We started talking about distinction within brands. We mentioned a couple of named brands, and actually that's fantastic. It's such a good kind of way to end it, really. Be bold. Don't try and hide who you are. Don't try and mimic other people. Have confidence in the products that you're creating. Have confidence in the community that you're creating.
Absolutely.
And then it'll build as that goes along.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. It's a great conversation.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. And I will let you get back to the event. We've got lots and lots more stuff going on. So and thank you.
No, pleasure. Thank you.